Book of Heaven, Volume 23, Part 6. November 6, 1927. One who lives in the divine will does not descend from her origin, and to her is due the state of queen, while one who lives outside of it lives in the state of servant. Difference between what the kingdom of redemption brings to one and to the other. How those who live in the divine will shall be the first before God. How the cross matured the kingdom of redemption. How a divine life runs within each truth. I was following the divine volition, accompanying all the acts that my sweet Jesus had done while being on earth. He made them present to me, and I invested them with my I love you, and asked him, with his very acts, for the kingdom of the divine Fiat. And I prayed him to apply to my soul everything he had done in the kingdom of redemption, to give me the grace to live always in his divine volition. And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, one who lives in my divine will does not descend from her origin. And since everything was created for those who would live in it, all the goods of creation are hers, that are more extensive than the goods of redemption. In fact, to one who maintains herself in the state of origin by living in the supreme Fiat, is due the state of queen, and as queen it befits her to possess. More so, since she is a queen who lives in the royal palace of our will, and therefore it befits her to possess kingdoms, suns, heavens, seas, and that the king himself live life together with her, making his queen happy, as she makes her king happy. This is why the goods of creation were to be more extensive. Otherwise, how could hers be the state of queen if she did not have dominion and kingdoms to dominate? On the other hand, by not living in our divine will, the soul descends from her origin. She disennobles herself and places herself in the state of servant. Therefore no kingdoms or empires befit her. More so since, in redemption, I came upon earth in order to resurrect man from the state of death, to heal him, to give him all possible remedies, to make him return to the first state of his origin, knowing that if he returned into our will from which he came, he would already be prepared to be maintained in the royal state of dominant. Even more, you must know that for those who live or will live in it, the acts that I did in redemption will serve not as remedies, but as happiness, as joy, and as the most beautiful ornament in the royal palace of my will. In fact, everything I did was nothing but a birth from it. Its merciful womb delivered for me, onto the lap of my humanity, all the acts I did in coming upon earth. Therefore it is right that as things that belong to it, they serve as ornament for itself. So in everything I did while being on earth, if I prayed, if I spoke, if I suffered, if I blessed the children, I kept tracing my children, the children of my divine will, to give to them the first act, the things that belonged to them, the happiness that they contained. And then I gave them as remedy for their salvation to the unfortunate children of sin, servants of the human will. Therefore, all of my acts ran as first act to those who would live in the supreme volition, as to their center of life. So one who lives in it can say, everything is mine. And I say, everything is yours. After this, I was thinking to myself, if the divine fiat has its first act in such a way that no one else can say, I am first act of it, how can those who will come later to live in it find themselves as first act before God, if the first are already there? And my divine Jesus added, my daughter, those who live or will live in my volition will all be like first act before God, because my will has one single act, an incessant act, that starts always from the first act. And by virtue of this single and incessant act, it elevates all the acts done in it to its first act, in such a way that all those who will live in my volition will find themselves in its one act, and all as first, before the adorable Majesty. Therefore in my will there will be neither before nor after, but all will be fused together in one single act. What honor, what glory for the creature, to be able to have her place in this single act of the will of her Creator, from which, as from a font, all goods and all possible and imaginable happinesses gush forth. Then, continuing to follow the acts of my beloved Jesus, I stopped when he received the cross, and embracing it with all the tenderness of his love, he placed it on his shoulders to carry it to Calvary. And Jesus added, my daughter, the cross matured the kingdom of redemption. It completed it, and placed itself as the custodian of all the redeemed ones, in such a way that if one lets herself be kept by the cross, she receives within herself the effects that a mature fruit contains, which contains taste, sweetness, and vital humor, and makes her feel all the good of redemption, in such a way that she matures together with the fruit of the cross, and disposes herself to return into the kingdom of my will. In fact, who has disposed you to live in it? Has it perhaps not been the cross of so many years that matured you like a beautiful fruit, took away from you all the bitter tastes that the earth contains, all the attachments of creatures, and converted them for you into divine sweetnesses, placing itself as guard, so that nothing might enter into you that would not be holy, that would not give of heaven? The cross, making all the vital humors flow within you, has done nothing other than form your Jesus in you. And your Jesus, finding you mature, formed the kingdom of his divine will in the depth of your soul. And taking the attitude of teacher, with all love, I spoke to you about it, and still do. I have taught you its ways, the life you must conduct in it, the prodigies, the power, and the beauty of my kingdom. You must know that every time your Jesus decides to manifest a truth, My love for it is so great that I bilocate my very life in each truth I manifest, so that each truth might have the power to form a divine life in creatures. See, then, what it means to manifest to you one truth less or one truth more. It is to put out a divine life at risk, to put it in danger, because if it is not known, loved, and appreciated, it is a divine life that does not receive its fruit, and that does not receive the honors that befit it. This is why I love so much the truths I manifest, because it is my life that runs within them, and I greatly love that they become known. How different is my operating from that of creatures! If they speak, teach, operate, they do not leave their life in the word and in the work. Therefore they do not grieve too much if their words and works do not obtain their fruits. On the other hand, I grieve very, very much, because it is life that I make run in what I manifest. November 10th, 1927. The soul alone with Jesus, and Jesus alone with her. How he alone enjoys her. Order and harmony of creation. How each created thing was to receive the action of Adam. God, first model of creation. Adam, the second. The third, the one who must make the kingdom of the divine Fiat return. I was feeling all abandoned in the eternal Fiat, all alone, and only for Jesus, as if no one else existed for me. So I thought to myself, I am alone. I feel nothing flow within me but the great sea of the divine will. Everything else does not exist for me. Jesus himself flies away and hides within its endless light. And if he makes himself seen for a little while, the rays of the sun of the divine volition rain down upon him, and my sight, too weak, remains eclipsed, and I lose him, waiting for my Jesus, my life, to free himself of that light, or to render it less bright, so that I may find him again. And I lament about the light that eclipses my sight and hides from me he who is the life of my poor soul. Oh, if this light of the blessed Fiat were less dazzling, I would enjoy my sweet Jesus, because many times I feel his divine touch, his refreshing breath. Other times, his lips that give me his kiss. But in spite of this, I do not see him. And the cause of all this is the blessed light that forms the eclipse. O holy will of God, how strong and powerful you are, to the point of hiding my beloved Jesus from me. Then, while I was thinking of this and other things, my highest good, Jesus, came out from within that light so dazzling, so I was able to see him. And he told me, "My daughter, you are alone with me, and I am alone with you. And because you are alone with me, I centralize all of myself in you. In fact, since you are alone with me, I can fill you completely with myself. There is not one point of view in which I do not take my place. You are transformed into myself, and as though naturally, the extraordinary grace enters into you. When the soul is alone with me, I am free to do whatever I want. I enjoy her, myself alone, and my love makes me do such great things with her that I reach the point of folly, and I perform so many of those loving stratagems that if they could be seen or heard by all creatures, they would say, "Only Jesus knows how to love, and can love in a way so astounding, so ingenious, and so great." With one who lives alone with me, I act as the sun would if it could centralize all of its light over one plant. This plant would receive into itself the whole of the life of the sun and would enjoy all of its effects, while the other plants receive only one effect each, which is sufficient for the nature of each plant. But the first one, because it receives the whole of the life of the sun, receives with it all the effects that the light contains. So I do. I centralize the whole of my life in her, and there is nothing of me that I do not let her enjoy. On the other hand, one who is not alone with me, because I cannot centralize my life, is without light. She feels within herself the weight of darkness. Her being is divided into so many parts, for as many as are the things that she cares about. So if she loves the earth, she feels divided with the earth. If she loves creatures, pleasures, riches, she feels as though divided into shreds, in such a way that some tear her from one side, some from the other. Her poor heart lives amid anxieties, fears, and bitter disillusions. All the opposite for one who lives alone with me. After this, I was following my round in the divine volition, and as I arrived at Eden, I was glorifying my Creator in the act in which, with his omnipotent breath, he infused life in the body of my first father, Adam. And my always lovable Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "Daughter, with what order and harmony was man created? Adam was created by us as king of all creation, and as king, he held supremacy over all things. And if he had not rejected our fiat, possessing the unity of it, during his whole life, he would have filled all created things with his acts. As king and owner, he had the right that each created thing undergo his action and be invested by its light, since each one of his actions was a sun, one more beautiful than the other. So he was to form the crown for all creation. He would not have been true king had he not known all of his dominions and possessed the right to place his acts in all the things created by us. It happened as when someone is the owner of a land. As the owner, he has the right to stroll within it, to plant flowers, plants, trees, in sum, anything he wants. So Adam was. With the power of our divine fiat, he did whatever he wanted. he bilocated in all created things. And if he spoke, if he loved, if he adored and operated, his voice resounded throughout the whole creation, and it was invested by his love, adoration, and work. Therefore the divinity felt the love, the adoration, the work of his first Son in all of his works. Now, the whole work of Adam would have remained in all creation as the first model for all of his descendants, who would have modeled all their acts in the reflections of the light of his acts, that as first father he would have given as inheritance to all his descendants, who would have had not only their model, but the possession of his very acts. What glory would ours and his have been, to see the works of our dear Son, of our precious treasure, who had been given birth by our love, fused with our works. What happiness for him and for us! Now, if this was our purpose for which all creation was created, as well as our dear jewel, which is man, is it not right that even though Adam started but did not finish, or rather he finished in sorrow and in confusion, because he rejected our divine will that served him as first act and made him operate in the works of his Creator, we fulfill this, our purpose, in his descendants? This is why I call you into the midst of my works in all creation, to form the model within which the other creatures must model themselves in order to return into my fiat. If you knew what joy I feel when I see that, making my divine volition your own, you want to animate the light of the sun, to tell me that you love me, and to ask me for my kingdom. And so with the swiftness of the wind, the murmuring of the sea, the flower, the outstretched heavens, and even the singing of the tiny little bird, you want to give your voice to all, animate all to tell me that you love me, that you adore me, and want the kingdom of the supreme fiat. I feel such contentment that I feel the first joys, the first love of my dear jewel, being repeated for me. And I feel inclined to put everything aside, to forget everything, so as to make everything go back to the way it was established by us. Therefore be attentive, my daughter. This is about something too great. You must know that the first model in creation was the Supreme Being, within which was man to model all his acts with his Creator. The second was to be Adam, within which all his descendants were to model themselves. But because he withdrew from my will, since my will and its unity were missing in him, he lacked the brushes, the colors, and the raw material to be able to make the models in the likeness of his Creator. Poor one, how could he form models with the very divine form if he was no longer in possession of that will that administered to him the ability to do it, as well as everything that was needed to be able to form the very models of God? By rejecting my divine fiat, he rejected the power that can do everything and knows how to do everything. It happened to Adam as would happen to you if you had neither paper nor pens nor ink with which to write. If these were lacking to you, you would not be able to write a single word. In the same way, he was no longer able to form the models on the divine mold. The third model must be formed by the one who must make the kingdom of my will return. Therefore your duties are great. On your models will all those of others be modeled. So, let the life of my divine will flow in all your acts, that it may administer to you everything that is needed. In this way, everything will go well, and your Jesus will be together with you to make you execute his divine models well. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 23, Part 6. Fiat.